والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا. And we were talking about chapter 13. Its title was menstruation and postnatal bleeding, and we reached to number 3, the postnatal bleeding. The ruling on a woman in a state of postnatal bleeding is like that of a menstruating one, concerning the permissibility of the husband to enjoy her without sexual intercourse. They also have the same rulings regarding the prohibition of sexual intercourse, observing fast, performing prayer, divorce, performing tawaf. All these are the same with hayd, with menstruation. Reciting the Noble Quran, there is a dispute in this issue, and staying in a mosque also there is a dispute in this issue also. Moreover, the rulings on both cases are the same regarding the obligation of taking a ritual bath when bleeding stops, and making up for the missed days of fast, but not the missed prayers, just like the menstruating women. Why we said that women and legislation that she has to make up for fasting and not for prayers, there's no clear reason mentioned about this, so we have to follow like this. We don't need to know, only we have to follow the Quran and the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. But the scholar said that this is the easiness. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He doesn't want to bring hardship to us. This is why He didn't legislate or obligate on a woman to make up for the missed days of prayers, because that will give her or bring her hardship, because some of women, they have 15 days menstruation, so that means she has to, the other 15 days she has to make up for the other days. That means she's praying double. Okay, also for postnatal bleeding, it might last for 40 days, so she has to make up for 40 days prayers. This is so much. So this is the easiness of Sharia, of this religion. But for the fasting days, she can make up any time of the day, no problem with that, it's easy. This is what the scholar said, and as we said, that we have to first obey, then afterwards if we want to ask what's the reason or what's the wisdom behind this rule or that rule, we can ask afterwards. This will increase maybe our iman, but our faith should be like we have to obey. Once we hear or read or know the rulings from Quran and Sunnah, from the authentic sources, once we hear something, once we hear that something is recommended or obligation or detestable or prohibited, we have directly to follow without asking why is that, why is not like this, and I'm not convinced. First convince me, then afterwards I will follow, and so on. So once you hear, once you know the ruling, you have to follow. Then afterwards, maybe you will know the wisdom behind this ruling, or maybe you will not know some rulings. For example, the prayer itself, it's 5 times a day. Why it's 5 times a day? Why Dhuhr 4 rak'ahs and Fajr 2 rak'ahs? We don't know. What's the wisdom behind that? There is a wisdom, but we don't know it. So we have to follow. We do it like this, and we don't need to know what is the reason for this and that, because we are Muslims. Muslims, that means we surrender to the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then the author states here, the womb of a woman in a state of postnatal bleeding discharges blood during and after giving birth, and this is the blood accumulated during pregnancy. The maximum period of postnatal bleeding is 40 days according to the majority of scholars. After the 40 days, if there's still blood discharge, that means it is istihada. It will not be considered as postnatal bleeding. This is why she has to take the ritual bath, then afterwards do whatever she has to do, like prayers, fasting, and everything, and she will consider that blood discharge as a istihada. We answered this question before in one of the YouTube answers for questions in the channel. You can go and watch that answer. Al-Tirmidhi states, people of religious knowledge among the companions of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and their successors uniformly agree that a woman in a state of postnatal bleeding must give up prayer for 40 days unless her bleeding stops before that. In this case, she has to take a ritual bath and perform prayer. So there is no minimum period. There is maximum period, which is 40 days. There is no minimum period. Maybe it's 1 minute. Okay? So, if the bleeding of a woman in a state of postnatal bleeding stops before the 40th day, her period of postnatal bleeding ends, and she must have a ritual bath, perform prayer, and practice all acts of worship that have been prohibited for her during her postnatal bleeding period. If a pregnant woman miscarries and starts discharging, and the stillborn has reached a distinctively recognizable form, she is considered a woman in a state of postnatal bleeding. An embryo takes about 81 days to 3 months in order to have a distinctively recognizable shape. If the embryo is a mere lump of flesh or clinging clot without a distinctly recognized form, the woman is not considered in a state of postnatal bleeding. Even if she starts discharging, she is not to give up prayer or fasting, and none of the rulings on postnatal bleeding is applicable in this case. It seems suitable to thoroughly complete our discussion at this point by mentioning that some women may take some kinds of medicine that prevents menstrual bleeding in order to observe fasting in month of Ramadan or to perform Hajj pilgrimage. Such medications are permissible if they prevent blood only for a period of time, not forever. If this medicine prevents menstruation forever, a woman is not permitted to take it without her husband's permission. Why? Her ability to give birth is also prevented as a result of taking this medicine, and that means she has to take her husband's permission because he might still need children, and so on and so on. The scholars agreed that she can take such a medicine, but they said in condition that this medicine doesn't have side effects. And some of them, they say most of these things have side effects, so you have to make sure when you take such medicines it doesn't have side effects on your health. Then afterwards, no problem with that. Thus, we have briefly highlighted the rulings on menstruation, which needs a much longer time to elaborate on. If a Muslim is confused or in doubt regarding any of the aforementioned rulings or any other ones, she must consult faqih, scholars of Islamic jurisprudence, and surely they will find what eliminates their confusion and doubt. Allah willing, we invoke Allah to grant us success. This is the end of the class, and if you have any question, inshallah we can answer this question. Jazakumullahu khairah. If your menses ended before sunrise, can you fast the next day and pray Fajr? If you mean by the next day, that means the same day, which is, for example, today, the sunrise. How can I fast? I should fast before Fajr prayer. And also, time of Fajr prayer ends with sunrise. So after the sun rises, that means we lost that day. Okay, that day is past. That's it. You have to make up for that day because you already entered that day fasting. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.